Good morning guys, my name is Josh, and today we're going to be talking about the differences between the 4XX and the 6XX from Massdrop. Now right off the bat, before I get into anything, I want you to be aware of two things. One, I have full reviews of both of these headphones. The links are in the description down below, and anything I say, these have higher highs, these have lower lows, better imaging, whatever, is in comparison to the other headphone, not as the headphone itself. The second thing is that both of these headphones I actually find to be very, very good, and I think either are going to be totally worth your money and you would be happy with both. But if you can only pick one, my goal here is to kind of point you in the right direction for you and what you may like. And then kind of a third note is that I have an updated recommended items list down below, and it's basically everything that I think would be worth a look at. Now that that's out of the way, if you're crunched on time and you want to skip to any particular part, go ahead and jump here. That'll get you to wherever you want to go. That being out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into build. Now I'm going to refer to both these headphones as the 4 and the 6 because saying XXXX over and over and over again is going to get really, really annoying for all of us. So right off the bat, the 4 and the 6 both have pretty good build quality. I'm going to give the upper hand to the 4. It's got more solid feeling plastic, has a more kind of robust feeling design. It does use a little bit of metal and overall feels a little bit more solid. So for build quality, I'm going to give it here. For build longevity, I can't speak for the 4s, but for the 6s, I do know a lot of people who have owned 600s and 650s for years without any build quality issues. So even though the build quality is not as good right out of the box, I still think that this is a wonderful headphone for build and comfort. Speaking of comfort, I think both of these are actually really, really good for it. However, there are a few caveats to both headphones. First being the 4s. The 4s are a little bit heavy and they do tend to get a little tiny bit hot, but this is just my experience, your experience may differ. And with the 6s, they do have a decent amount of clamp force, although they have no issue fitting around anybody's ears. And for me, they don't have any issues whatsoever. I don't really care about the clamp force. It doesn't really seem to bother me, but some people do complain that it puts pressure on like their lower jaw. So if you're really sensitive to clamp force, you may want to consider that. Both have dual-sided connectors, although the Sennheiser's is a lot more proprietary to Sennheiser. They use a strange connection. I'm not sure what the name is, but I do actually recommend using peri-apt cables because not only do you get a really solid quality cable, they also fit the proprietary input on this headphone. On the 4XXs, they use 2.5 millimeters on both sides, and there is recommended cable down in the link description below. All right, guys, now let's talk about the power requirements for both of these headphones. So the 6XX is going to come in at 300 ohms with a sensitivity level of 103 decibels. And the 4 has an impedance of 35 ohms, but the sensitivity level is 93 decibels. You do need a little bit more power for the 6 than you do the 4. Although to get the full experience of both, I do strongly recommend an amplifier. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the bulk of what this review is about. What are the sonic differences between these two headphones? Overly generalized, the 4 is wider sounding and warmer sounding, whereas the 6 is more detailed and more neutral. Now let's get into the nuances of the sound, starting with highs. Now, like I said in the full review of this, the highs are actually the most disappointing part of this headphone. They still have authority behind them, but in comparison, they're a little weak. They're not extremely detailed or particularly resolving. The 6 is much more detailed, much more resolving, a little bit brighter in comparison though. And something you may want to factor in is that that might be a little bit fatiguing for longer listening sessions. Now, that's a personal experience of mine. Your experience may differ completely. Also, due to the vast difference in Soundstage, which we'll get to in a second, 4's highs seem actually quite far away in comparison to the very, very intimate highs of the 6. Now let's talk about the mid-range. This is definitely going to go to the HD6XXs. You get more detail, more intimacy, and more presence with the mid-range. Better vocal isolation, smoother yet more detailed, although they can feel a little bit shouty at times. Now the 4's mids are very, very good, just it's really hard to beat those Sennheiser mid-ranges. Now overall, the 4 has definitely good mid-range, but it doesn't quite have the same attention to detail that you get with the 6s. Now for the bass notes, now the 4, without ever being boomy, has better rumble, has better heft, has better kind of speed and attack to the actual low notes. And the low notes take a pretty aggressive approach with this headphone and have a pretty strong influence on how the music sounds. Now the 6 has good bass detail, but it lacks the same impact and aggressiveness of the 4. And regarding bass notes, it does leave a little bit to be desired. Now imaging and Soundstage are where these are kind of polar opposites and you kind of get to pick which one you prefer. So the 6 is going to be more intimate and the 4 is going to be a lot wider. Soundstage is going to be pretty much greater and wider in every category on the 4, whereas imaging is going to be tighter and it's going to be a lot more intimate in pretty much every category on the 6. Now the way the Soundstage and the imaging works out for these kind of lends itself to different styles of how the actual headphone delivers sound to you. Now what do I mean by that? Well, the 6s feel more intense, they feel more in your face, they're more aggressive in their approach, but the 4s sound larger. They have a grander or a greater sound to them. Not in terms of quality, but just kind of this vastness to the sound. The song that really stood out to me and that very few headphones I feel can do right is Mountains by Hans Zimmer from the Interstellar soundtrack. There's a very, very slow crescendo and then this huge blast of an entire organ, and it just sounds phenomenal on the right headphones. It was more aggressive on the 6s, but a larger and more enjoyable sound on the 4. Now speaking of the 4 Soundstage, I was actually able to get very, very enjoyable kind of live iterations of music from like Postmodern Jukebox because of that Soundstage, and actually somewhat having pretty intimate vocals because you get this great separation between the background and the foreground. The 6 can do that too in terms of detail, but it's not quite the same level that the 4 can do it. So it's just bringing in those vocals while still having piano and guitar in the background and being very, very enjoyable for a little bit closer to feeling like you're in the room type of experience. Whereas the 6XX kind of feels like you are the microphone, if that makes any sense. Okay, so what is the conclusion of both of these headphones? Both are excellent. To be honest, I don't think you're going to be disappointed with either. And hopefully with this comparison, you can kind of think of what you prefer in your sound and you can pick which one is going to suit your needs better. Do you want warmer, bassier, and better soundstage? Or do you want tighter imaging, better neutrality, and more mid-range focus? Do you want something accurate or do you want something fun? And I will leave that decision up to you. Links to everything are down below. I hope you guys like this video. I do new videos every single day. I do topic videos, let's talks, reviews, comparisons, stuff like that. So hit that subscribe button if you're not already, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.